I'm Eric Rasmussen. I'm the owner of Right to Bear Arms, and I'm also the Vice President of the New Mexico Firearms Industry Association.
I'm Louis Sanchez. I'm one of the owners of Caliber's indoor shooting ranges.
I'm Anthony Segura. I'm the Executive Director for the New Mexico Shooting Sports Association, and I'm the President of the New Mexico Shooting Sports Foundation.
Joshua Grosclose, President of New Mexico Shooting Sports Association.
Jay Grosclose, Chairman, or maybe formerly Chairman now, of the Santa Fe County Friends of NRA.
Now to the battle over gun rights in New Mexico. The governor imposed a temporary ban on carrying firearms in public places, declaring that gun violence is a public health emergency. Victor Akendo has that story.
Do not comply!
This morning, outrage after a controversial firearm ban in New Mexico. The emergency order sparking open carry demonstrations in Albuquerque, crowds of people publicly carrying guns in defiance of the governor.
Is there anything that you guys want to update New Mexicans on now? Because a lot of people are asking about the lawsuit and all these different things. So is there something we could give them?
Which lawsuit are you speaking of specifically?
Any of them? Like, do you think
There's the one against the governor?
Yes, correct.
You could probably speak better to that because you're one of the principals.
Yes.
Well, we're just waiting for the next step. We were the first. There's 5 or 6 organizations that have filed suit against the governor. We're just one of them. We were the first New Mexico entity to file the lawsuit. So it's still in process. We're still waiting for the next step. We have been financially supporting it. We just approved $10,000 in financial aid to cover the cost of the lawsuit. So that's where we're at right now. But it's continuing, and we're going to keep it going. We're not going to back off.
Okay. And you, Eric, did you have any kind of update on your end?
No, just as far as through the New Mexico Firearms Industry Association, we're a relatively new organization. We formed after this last legislative session. We were one of probably 5 different gun stores that spent a lot of time up there. I can say for myself, and we were, myself and my one of my managers, we were up there every session that related to a gun bill. So we got to see just how grossly inaccurate
And how bad these laws are written.
Yes. They don't know the laws. They don't even, they're copied from somewhere else. They submitted. They don't know. They can't speak to them. When you ask them a straight out question, they can't speak to it. When you would challenge the constitutionality of it, John Block was challenging Andrea Romero about it, and her response was, "Well, I'm not here." She said, "No right is absolute," and that she was not there to debate constitutional law.
So she said that as well.
She said that.
That's
yes.
a talking point, I guess.
She said that in a debate with me as well.
Yeah.
Constitutional rights were relative.
Right.
At the
So
discretion of the government.
so John Block, he did ask. He said then she would be okay if he took away her right that allowed her to vote. Women to right to vote, which she didn't really have. That her response to that was, "Well, I'm not here to debate constitutional law." That was her rebuttal to that remark. So I think they're not very bright in some ways, and they're probably bright in others, just in the fact that they say the right things to get at people's emotions, but anything that they speak to it's just garbage. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It just if they really want to do some changes, they really want to make some effective changes, which we in the industry have said, come talk to us.
Right.
Come sit down and talk with us. We know where the problems are. We can help you with some of the problems, but no, nobody's willing to come sit down and talk with us, because then their point's invalid once they're so ignorant that whether it's by design or by omission or accident, that way they can say, well, I didn't know. But once they're educated, then they won't be able to say that.
Exactly.
So.
I think that's such a great point about how they ride on emotions. I was up there last session, and you had Raul Torres and then Brett Allen, and please forgive me, but I can't remember the bill because there were so many of them.
Right.
But it was regarding that they were mandating every firearm be locked up in a safe, even if it was in your house. And they even said that even for self-defense. And my point to them was, first of all, it's like, so if somebody is breaking into your house, you would like for us to debate the perpetrator and just say, please wait until I can go to my gun safe to come out. Well, the whole purpose of the law was, as you guys know, everybody knows, is a horrible incident that happened when the middle schooler got shot at Washington Middle School. And so I shot back at Raul Torres and said, well, if our legislators and our elected officials would actually do their job, because they didn't know, and I felt so bad because it's such a horrible incident. The grandmother of the victim was there, and she didn't realize that firearm had been used 2 years earlier by the perpetrator's father in a shooting at Highland High School. Raul Torres had him where he could have, as you know, he could have confiscated that firearm.
Yep.
Could have got that gentleman off of the street. And I'm not even saying, I shouldn't say gentleman because he wasn't. He could have got him off the street. That gun would have been off the street. But yet, once again, in our catch and release system, he allowed for that just to go just with a small little penalty. And the gentleman was a gangbanger, got to keep his firearm, go back 2 years later. His son, who is emulating his father, decided that he was disrespected at school and went and shot that 11-year-old. And that gun should have never been on the streets at all. But they do that all the time. I mean, we see it all the time. How many times have we seen it for a mass shooting? And
They were in our radar.
Right. Well, no, and the governor always comes back, well, the mass shootings. Well,
or my favorite, part of the government forgets to submit to the other part of the government
Right.
that this person can't own a firearm anymore.
Right.
Right, and that's the thing about it. And we focus, and as I told the governor specifically, I go, we always focus on the mass shooting and we never focus on the mass shooter. Every one of these mass shooters, or 99% of them, have all advertised in social media what they're going to do.
Yes. Right. It's not a surprise.
It has never been a surprise. The person up, the mass shooter up in Farmington, who took out and actually one of my close friends' grandmother, he advertised it because he got cut from the wrestling team. Aztec shooter advertised it on social media. Florida advertised on social media. Buffalo advertised on social media, but yet they want to impinge on our constitutional rights. But yet, I find it interesting that social media can produce algorithms that if you say one bad thing about the COVID vaccine anything about the government, that they will ban you, and they can have algorithms to actually pinpoint you, and you'll become what we call, identified with the FBI as a domestic terrorist. But yet they can't put the algorithms together to put where they see these 18 and 19-year-old, and that's all they are, is children, because they're not men. When they're threatening, and police have actually gone to a lot of these individuals' homes, but they make us and legal gun owners the bad.
Right.
We are. We're the criminals in this.
There are so many laws on the books right now. We don't need more. Enforce the ones that we have.
Exactly.
When you have so many, and everybody likes to say gun violence, and I think that's something else that the progressives and those on the left have come up with. It's the gun didn't commit the violence. It's somebody committing violence, but they're using a gun.
They're always blaming the gun.
Right. So it's not gun violence, it's violence with a gun. Mm-hmm. Because they're going to commit violence no matter what. They're going to use a car, they're going to use a knife, they're going to use a hammer, they're going to use... And those other things kill a lot more people than guns do. Hands and feet kill more people than guns do.
Yeah, there was a statement in the Capitol in D.C., and it was a Democrat, talking about the amount of deaths by gun-related incidents. And so he said that there was somebody refuting that argument, and he said 65% of all gun-related deaths are actually suicide.
Yes.
So it's still the person. There's another problem. There's another issue that they're not addressing, and they're labeling, law-abiding citizens that have their license, go through training, and then even gun store owners. They're labeling all these issues that they fabricate on you guys.
Mislabeling by the government is a big thing because they identify a school shooting as not just, where it's kid on kid. It could be on a non-school day, two gangbangers and a drug deal gone wrong, shot fired, that's school shooting. Somebody tries to mug somebody at the school shooting. Doesn't even have to be in during school hours. It could be after school hours, no kids are around, and it's considered a school shooting because it took place on the property of the school.
Right.
It's almost like the COVID numbers in a sense.
Yeah.
Having worked the streets for many years as a paramedic, I can tell you there's a lot of people that kill themselves not using a gun.
Right.
So there's, they're going to find a way.
Of course.
If that's what they want to do, they're going to find a way.
Yeah. That's such a good statement because, it's the gun is the easy part for them to blame.
Right.
Right. And it truly is. And so, two things. With some of the new legislation that they're proposing, like 428, SB 428, where if anybody commits
Unfair trade practice.
Right. And so they go and shoot somebody, well, then they can track that gun all the way back to the original retail sale and go after the retailer. And what that is going to do is that'll put almost every business out of business, a firearm dealer out of business, except for maybe Cabela's. And then what she's actually going to produce is that she's going to produce a black market where people are going to be going up to Colorado, or they're going to be going to Texas, or they're going to be going to Arizona. It's but the gun's easy, and I think you had such a great statement though. It's emotional, and if it wasn't, blaming the gun for this violence and for criminals committing violence, it's like we know the biggest killer still in this country is heart disease, which is mainly caused by smoking. So
and diabetes.
And diabetes. So rather than going after the cigarettes, let's go after the matches.
Right.
And that's what we're doing.
Blame the fork for making somebody fat.
Well, and if she's going to go that direction, then what happens? We also lead the country in DWIs.
Right.
So if there's somebody hurt in a DWI or somebody's killed, is she going to allow for the individual who was hit by the person who was drunk to go after the car dealership?
They would like to.
That's exactly what she's going here. It is just total totalitarian. And to your point too, is like we follow the rules. Every one of us, every honest and law-abiding gun dealer, we follow the rules. Somebody comes in, we do a NICS check. You know what we can't see? We can't see if something's going on with the state. Because what's NICS? It's FBI.
Right.
And that's how we check it. And she really wants to make this work well. First of all, follow the laws that are on the books.
Yeah.
And give us, and I guarantee we wouldn't have a problem. You guys wouldn't have a problem. I don't think anybody would have a problem. It's like, guess what? It would probably take an additional 10 minutes for us to run the NICS and the state check.
We don't want bad people to have guns.
Right. Exactly.
And we are the last line of defense in preventing that from happening.
There's this a prime example of what you guys are both going on, and it's with catch and release. You'll get some of these guys that are arrested multiple times for threatening people with a firearm and everything else, the judges, DAs, everything else. All of them let them off, and when somebody finally does die at those people's hands, they've got an arrest record.
Right.
3.5 miles long, but not one conviction.
The kids that broke into my store, I caught two of the four, and they didn't do anything to them. They got probation. They got their hands slapped. Oh well, they didn't do it. They've never committed any crimes before. And I told the defense attorney, I said, "Oh, I'm sure that nobody that I've ever met, their first crime was robbing a gun store,
Right.
burglarizing a gun store, and they spent an hour and a half getting in." So, but yeah, they didn't do anything to them. And I even said to the judge, "You want to do something? Here's your chance to do something." And then I find out later they were all gangbangers. But yeah, they're all underage and nothing happened to them.
Well, the guy that shot the kid that initially sparked the Second Amendment suspension, he was released as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was big news. And so
He was wanted on other warrants. too.
Right, he was in his 20s. It wasn't a kid, and it was a mistaken identity. So
So, kind of going back to pre-revolution, I don't know if you guys know who James Otis is. James Otis is the founding father of our founding fathers. And in 1761, he made a famous argument against the writs of assistance. It's pretty much a blank search warrant. They can show up, search, try to find something they deem as illegal, and then get the warrant signed, and then go arrest and seize your property. And so that's what they were arguing against. And so he went and argued there, and all our founders, which were in a sense under him, they were ready to bear arms after that day because their home was not their castle. And he said, if your home's not your castle, then you're not free. Well, in 1764, he kind of adds a little bit more in this, it's the Annals of America. This is one volume. And this little portion right here, I highlighted a bunch just for today, but this part says a power of legislation with a power of execution, which is executive. In the same or other hands would be futile and vain. Okay, so that's saying if you put laws on the books and they're not enforced, that's in vain. But then it says on the other hand, the power of the executive branch, supreme or subordinate, without an independent legislature, would be perfect despotism. Mm-hmm. And so that's really what we're going through. We're going through, in a sense, an executive branch that can mandate her law into existence, and then the laws that are on the books are not enforced. And so it's really pre-revolution living conditions that a lot of people don't understand. We have, like, I always like to reference it as the electricians and the engineers. The electricians are boots on the ground. They know all the practical issues of that industry. The engineers could say run a pipe here, and it could be going through the HVAC, the wall, and outside the door, and it's not in the right place. Well, it's the same thing with every industry that they're regulating in. We have people that are uneducated that are now elected officials, and they're taught something. They're taught something, but they're not taught, practical common sense of these many industries. And then Abraham Lincoln says that the philosophy in the classroom for one generation is going to be the philosophy in the legislative branch in the next generation, and that's what we're living through. We're living through the consequence of
we're seeing
many
it now.
generations. Yep.
We are in. It's interesting facts. I know the ATF just finally released their first statistics, nationwide statistics. They did a study between 2017 and 2021, and they released it. And of course, more guns were sold during and right after the pandemic, and because of course we know what happened in 2020 with the George Floyd and defund the police, and let's go and as we've always said, we don't ask people at the door if they're Democrat or Republican.
Exactly.
We never have. But we're seeing a lot more first-time gun owners, and sometimes I will ask them. It's like, oh, well, thank you for being here. Or I've actually had a lady who came up and said, yes, I know, that you're running for Congress, and I wouldn't vote for you because I'm a Democrat. It's like, oh, well, why are you here? And she goes, because we don't feel safe. And that's really what she said. She goes, because of the crime problem that's in Albuquerque, and the fact of the matter is, more laws don't help. If you look at Chicago, they have the most stringent gun laws in the whole U.S. and they have the most violence and the most firearm deaths than any other city in the whole country.
Right.
Going back to that study, we sold so many firearms because people were scared and they wanted to defend themselves, and they knew what was going on with the police when the progressives were trying to defund the police. They just wanted to feel safe, and they wanted to be able to protect not only themselves but their family. Mm-hmm. Well, what the ATF found is that a majority of all of the crimes that were committed with firearms were committed with illegal firearms.
Correct.
Of all those guns that were bought during that period, and they said that they're going to have the total number pretty soon, but in the last year of 2021, they found 1 million of those guns that were involved in violent crimes were stolen and due to theft.
The majority of those are being stolen out of vehicles.
And stolen out of vehicles because people are just basically leaving, they're thinking it's 1970 and putting it in their glove box.
And the time for, as far as when one of the other laws they're trying to get through is the waiting period. which was Stephanie, and there was a few others that brought it up. Well, what if you're a victim of domestic violence and you need a gun to protect yourself? We'll call the police, was their answer. Well, anybody that lives in this area, or if you live in a rural area, it's going to be a long time before somebody shows up. And so you really, why do you have a gun? Because a cop's too heavy to carry on my back. We're there. If you're lucky to have a police officer there when a crime happens, that's just happenstance. That's not what the police are there for. They're not there to preempt and stop crimes in that regard and violent crimes. You've got to be there to protect yourself. The other figure that you never hear is how many crimes have been stopped
Right.
because somebody does have a firearm.
Yeah.
You never hear that figure.
I'm sure you guys have all that.
FBI stopped releasing that info.
Right.
With CDC and all of them. They stopped releasing that info 2015, I think was the last time they released that info.
What-
Overwhelming.
It was too
One of the other things too that you don't hear is they actually have the figure, and I don't recall what it was. It's months or years. The time a gun was purchased until that time that gun may or may not have been used in a crime is a very long period of time, and that's usually after it's been stolen. It's not by the person. Most people that are purchasing firearms legally are not using them to commit crimes or commit any acts of violence. It's kind of contrary to who we are.
Well, it is. And then we talk about the laws. If they would just, make common sense laws that we could all follow. As you guys know, some of the legislation that I was trying to get passed last session, right? If someone's breaking into your house, you defend yourself and you discharge a firearm inside your house, and they deem it a populous area, they could charge you with discharging a firearm.
With one of these new laws that
Yes.
they were trying to get through.
Right.
Yep.
So they could actually charge you, but there was no specifics on what they consider a populous area.
Right.
Another one was when they were saying, weapons of war are fully automatic. Well, they had no. I mean, there was no details on what that entailed at all. It's whatever. Andres Romero could go up and say, "Oh, that looks scary. That's a semi-automatic," and that would be illegal. That would literally be illegal, and for them to actually say, well, we're going to limit, let's just talk about our industry, mag capacity.
Right.
How do we do that? You get a side-by-side, you get a Glock 19, side-by-side, I mean, you can't put it to a single stack.
Nope.
I mean, I guess you could get some kind of adapter, have some kind of
To
build.
block the
Well, they wouldn't
magazine.
even
Yeah, block the
allow-
magazine.
They wouldn't even allow that.
In the law, they overruled the fact that you could put a dummy round in there to reduce it below 10. That would still be illegal.
And just to show you how, two examples that I can think of. One was on a Zoom call that happened with, and believe it or not, it was Ivy Soto, who actually had he kept saying, this is not my information, because all of the information he put out, which was to educate a lot of the legislators, was speaking like what we would be saying, and it was all about all of the. He should have been on our side. It was about all of the so-called facts that were not facts, and this was the actual what the studies and everything that proved, including the assault weapons ban, and it didn't reduce anything. It was actually very well laid out. But there was one gentleman there, he said, well, I was in Vietnam, and I can tell you those M16s, they were worthless, and they jammed, and blah, blah, blah. And I took care of people that were caught or shot, with an M16, and there was holes this big in them, and you can't use them to hunt with, because all that's going to be left is the head and the tail. Well, anybody that has shot an AR, a 223 or 5.56 bullet knows that's not the case, and knows that that's probably not big enough to kill a deer, unless you have real good shot placement. And if he was taking care of people shot with M16s, which side was he on?
Yeah.
They were being shot with AKs if he was an Army medic, as he said. But even people that people that had prior military experience, just because you were military doesn't mean you know anything about guns. Mm-hmm. And there was one of the state senators, I don't know if you were there at that one when I had a conversation with him because, you know, he was keeps bringing up assault weapons, and I said my piece about assault weapons, and he, well, were all these automatic weapons used in shootings, school shootings? No, sir, they're not automatic weapons. Automatic weapons have been illegal for many years. There are certain ones that you can buy. They're tens of thousands of dollars. They take a long time to get. Well, I seem to recall being a switch when I was in boot camp. This is probably 60 years ago, and I said, yes, sir. That was that is the full automatic switch. That is your assault weapon, but not what you're talking about. We're talking about semi-automatic weapons. We're not talking about automatic weapons.
Right.
But he does not. They don't want to hear that. You know, and I bet you if we brought a Ruger Ranch rifle in and showed them, they go, "Oh yeah, that's great. There's nothing wrong with that." Even though it's the exact same caliber, the exact same magazine, and has the exact same rate of fire, and does exactly the same thing as an AR-15 does.
It's the scary guns.
It's scary.
It's the same thing that's now going to be brought up by Martin Heinrich,
Oh.
Angus in Maine,
Yes.
Angus King. They're talking about that, and that's exactly what they're talking about, is the look of the gun.
Right.
Black and plastic.
With interchangeable parts, and you know, I've been asked from a few people about my take on that, and because it's what any gas-operated firearm.
Yeah.
Well, that essentially would take away every semi-automatic gun made.
Well, they do have some. They're not allowing shotguns. They're not going to be included. I don't know why.
Because the
Most
capacity
of the
of 5 rounds.
semi-automatic shotguns are gas operated.
Right.
So
No, anything that's semi-automatic is gas operated.
the pistols.
Pistols.
How many pistols is going to be excluded from that?
Mhm.
You know,
Anything
everybody's
but a
gonna have to-
revolver.
You're gonna have to go back and carry a single action revolver.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, they're not stupid in that regard. They've got somebody that's trying to figure out any way they can to figure out a way, just like the 9-round magazines. That wasn't that by accident. That was by design.
Right.
Because most guns, other than in 1911, most semi-automatic pistols are 10 rounds and higher.
Higher.
and that's also included in the Go Safe Act.
Right.
King and
Oh yeah, because it has to be a fixed magazine. You can't remove it. Yeah.
C96 stripper clip style.
Right.
You know, it's interesting when election season starts coming around and you start seeing this with Martin Heinrich because, of course, you know, he's going for Senate, and then Melanie Stansberry is going to start popping in on this, and Gabe Velasquez is going to start popping in on this, and so, and then, you know, we have our work cut out for us, and not only us, but the citizens of New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And as we told a lot of the representatives up in Santa Fe that last session, it's like, you better really think about where you're going with this, because the majority of you are legislators over rural areas, over ranchers and
Yes.
farmers. I was like, and you're going to be affecting probably 90% of your constituents with what you guys are trying to put down. And then the only person I've ever heard actually talk honest about it, well, that's not true. A lot of the sheriffs, but even Manny Gonzalez actually said when he was sheriff, he goes, I will not, he goes, they try to do a gun confiscation, I will not send my officers
Right.
into people's homes to go
Right.
confiscate guns. And the way they're setting up these red flag laws, that's what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at your neighbor wrong and you just yell at your dog for tearing up your carpet, they can say, oh, well, I felt threatened and he has young kids in that home.
And I know he's got guns.
Yeah, and I know he has guns, and APD can actually show up.
Right.
It becomes like the snitch hotline for the
That's
mandates.
exactly what's
And
going
then
to
what's going to happen when APD or state police or whoever shows up to that gun owner's house? You know, are we now in a confrontation, and somebody's getting shot or
Right.
over nothing illegal, but somebody says so. That's the
Right.
that's the bad thing about the red flag law.
Prime
I'm not opposed to somebody that's deemed mentally incompetent. You know,
Absolutely.
they shouldn't have firearms. But, you know, just because somebody says something, how many divorces or domestic situations where tempers flare and somebody says or does something that they don't necessarily mean, But in the heat of the moment, they say something, now that person is deemed he can't own a firearm, and they're going to take that firearm from him.
There was an incident in Santa Fe in which a young girl, this happened at one of the high schools, was like this one guy. Well, he didn't like her back, and he just totally rejected her in terms of going on a date and everything else. She got mad, filed a false report. Police went to his house, took all the guns out of his house, and arrested his dad because she had filed a report saying that he was going to shoot up the school. All their guns were taken and everything else, only to find out that she filed a false report. Nothing happened to her, but it has taken the father tens of thousands of dollars just to get his firearms back after being proven that no threat was ever made. The girl, and it came out that the girl, because she texted one of her friends, I got him. I called the police on him because I'm mad that he didn't want to go on a date with me. And her friend actually told him, but he's still he still hasn't received all of his firearms back. And that was almost 10 years ago.
Right. And then we truly turn it into a confiscation state, and that's what it is. And, I know this is kind of off the subject, but one of the best political speeches I ever heard was, God, it wasn't given by me, which is a lot for me to say, it was a lady named Floyd. I still remember this, that she was an immigrant from Venezuela. And she actually, she was, she's very truthful in what she said. She goes, when I was a teenager, she goes, I'll be honest. She goes, myself and all my friends, we were campaigning for Hugo Chavez. We were sitting there holding rallies for Hugo Chavez. We were part of the millions because everything sounded fantastic. She goes, all of a sudden, Hugo Chavez gets in. She goes, and yeah, socialism worked for a year. She goes, we all got our checks. Everything was free. She goes, after a year, she goes, our checks started going down and long lines started happening at hospitals and grocery stores, and energy started becoming not dependable whatsoever.
Right.
She goes, everybody knows what happened 4 years ago when Venezuelans started rallying against the government. And she said, she goes, the same people that were rallying for all this government confiscation, she goes, because the first thing they did, she goes, is not only they took over education, they took over energy, and then they went and confiscated all the guns.
Right.
She goes, we started rallying. She goes, and there's millions of us. She goes, we were throwing rocks and they were throwing back bullets. And she goes, they put down the Venezuelan citizens within hours. And there was nothing any Venezuelan could do about it.
Right.
Because of complete confiscation of every firearm in that country.
There's a lot of immigrants here in this country that came from socialist countries and other places, and they'll tell you the same thing. Open your eyes, people. This is really happening. There is a socialist wave that's coming across this country, and it's really happening. Don't. Unfortunately, and that ties into the other thing with the gun laws with New Mexicans. Unfortunately, have a bad. Oh, that'll never happen here.
Yeah.
And we see a lot of the other retail. Yeah, it's not going to happen here. I'm not worried about it. Well, they need to start worrying about it.
Well, let's just talk about this last joke that she did. After that shooting, right? We all know that because we were all at the rallies, right? She went after concealed carries.
Right.
Oh, there's no more concealed carry at all. Well, and all of us were on TD saying the people with concealed carry aren't the ones you got to worry about.
No.
Those aren't the ones that are going into, and then you knew it was bad when we were all tourists said, I can't defend her. She went on CNN. And the CNN, who is not the bastion of conservative thinking, actually said, it's like, this is truly unconstitutional. How do you think you can get this passed? Oh, I think I can get it passed.
Right.
Because she thinks she can force her thing because they almost have a supermajority. So they're going to just throw their will upon the New Mexican citizens. And we need to stand up as citizens because guess what? Yes, it's about our business. And let's just throw it out there. It is, right? Because you have a lot of money invested in it. I have a lot of money invested in this. Right? But the fact of the matter is, you guys, this is our constitutional right.
Right.
We've had millions and millions of Americans who have died for this.
Right.
But let's just throw it out because she needs an accomplishment, and I will throw it because everybody knows the governor and I are not friends. She needs something to hang her hat on because she can't hang her hat on anything else that's gone well in the state of New Mexico.
That's the truth.
Agreed.
All. So if she can get rid of scary guns, right? The scary, it's the root of all evil. that's going to do nothing for crime because they will not enforce any of the laws in the books. We have so many APD and Sheriff's Department and ATF and FBI that come in, but APD will tell you time and time and time. It's like they will bring in a criminal, they're still writing out the report, and that criminal's walking straight out the door. And that's what's happening.
Oh, yeah, I saw it myself when I was,
I'm sure.
yeah.
I think there's another wild card that we have to consider as we move ahead too, and that is the proliferation of drugs in the state. We're moving more and more to a cartel state.
We're already there.
We're there.
Yeah.
We're already there.
We've been there for a long time.
Yep.
And
It's
that's
more prevalent,
I
more
think
pronounced.
plays a lot into the violence and
Sure it does.
The thing among the gangbangers and kids is the drug thing. That's another problem that contributes to what she is calling the gun problem that could be solved if they would at least try to control the drug problem somewhat. It happens, the drug and alcohol.
Follow the money.
biggest thing in domestic violence, drugs and alcohol. And that's the thing she won't touch, is
So-
drugs and alcohol.
Follow the money. There's
Absolutely.
There-
So let's go to your point, though.
there's a reason for that.
Let's go to your point. With gangs and cartels, where do these kids have to turn in New Mexico? She can't hang her hat on anything else. We have the highest unemployment in the U.S. for a state.
Right.
We still do. We have the worst educational system in the U.S. and we spend more money than any place
Right.
else in the U.S. We have no jobs. She shut down this state so bad during COVID, we lost 60% of our small businesses. What is she going to hang her hat on? She has one thing that she can go after, the scary gun. And I thought that was very profound that you said, because that's what it is. It's
Right.
scary, and if I can do that, then maybe I can get national attention, because the only national attention she's getting right now is that she's the governor of the worst run state in the whole country. And she knows it. And these kids have no opportunities, none, to strive or to better their lives in New Mexico. That's why we lose our best asset we have is our children, and they're going to Arizona, Colorado, and Texas, because that's where they have to
She
go.
is turning us into a socialist state, has been. And was it Thatcher that said, socialism is great until you run out of other people's money?
Other people's money, right. And that's true.
But it's, and it's slowly been eating away and eroding. When kind of wanted to touch back just a little bit before we move on. Or move to
Before we go
different-
off on another tangent?
Yeah. When we were talking about violence and the blaming the gun and it being the easy thing to do, it's a societal problem. It's the breakdown of society that's the root of the violence. It's the breakdown of the family unit. It's nobody is held accountable for anything. You can't discipline your children, and then there are many people that won't discipline their children, which I experienced many times. I got my butt whipped when I was a kid when I disobeyed, and I think I'm relatively normal. And there's things that have to happen in the home, and the government has stepped in so much and done such an overreach into getting into every little bit of people's lives and into their families that we're unable to take care of and be a family unit in many instances because the government is not allowing us to do that. And to your point that you said earlier, they forget the government is running our lives. Our government was never created to run our lives. Correct. It's a representative government. They're supposed to do what we tell them to do. And that's not happening, and it's certainly not happening here in this state, which is obvious since COVID, prime example since COVID began.
Right, sure.
It's people here in New Mexico need to wake up and understand what's going on and need to take back what's been taken from us and not be afraid to do it. But they're either it'll never happen here or, no, that would never happen.
It's time to stop sugarcoating. It's time to stop
Yes.
just being, this is how it is, this is what's going on.
Right.
Either you're in it or you're not.
Try not to let military
Right, because then we're
mouths come out.
gonna have more documentaries like this, right? About that they have such a super, progressives have such a supermajority in this state that we're actually really worried about them taking away our Second Amendment rights when the Constitution is out there for them to read and they say they don't care because they can push it through.
Including the state constitution.
Right. Well, yes. Yeah, exactly. Including the state constitution, because we don't put up a fight and we're afraid to hurt somebody's feelings.
Exactly.
You know, and it's interesting, and you guys all know this. In 2020, when I told the governor I wasn't going to close down, and all of a sudden I got the
we didn't either.
Back off, Louis. You don't want. It's like, no, screw her. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say screw on TV. But it's true. She didn't care. She didn't care about your business. She didn't care about mine. She didn't care about the 60%. But what did we do? We backed off. Right? And then now we're in this situation where we could actually lose our Second Amendment right in this state when there's so many other things that need to get fixed.
Oh, yeah.
So many other things, but yet, hey, let's go after the law-abiding firearm owners and let's go after concealed carry courses. And then the funny thing is she has no idea what it takes to get a concealed carry.
No.
At all. And the cost involved in those people and the time involved to do that and our time involved to get that through.
And now it's getting worse.
Worse. And so
they're making the 2-year. It's always been mandatory.
But now you have to go requalify and everything else, which you didn't have to do before.
And it has to be done through an instructor.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Which, guess what? It makes us happy, but it shouldn't have to happen.
I'm an instructor, so it makes me happy too.
But it shouldn't have to happen, right?
Not
because
really, actually.
that's what our rally was when
Should
she
be
did
constitutional.
this thing. Right, and we said the truth. It's like
it also goes back to the education system. I remember when they taught firearm safety in elementary school. The last year they stopped teaching it in Santa Fe was when I was in 3rd grade in the 90s. Eddie Eagle and all those programs. And Santa Fe police would come in, they'd bring a bunch of BB guns, they'd set up the target stand, and during PE that day, all the classes would go in and they'd shoot BB guns and talk about firearm safety, what you do, what you don't do.
Air rifle competitions.
Exactly, air rifle competitions, and at the end of the day, some kid got some cheap hat or something like that from NRA program, and then they took that out of the schools.
Right.
And they took the firearms education out of schools.
That is a great point. You know why? Because when, and of course, me having the facilities here, but I only have boys. That's it. And when my boys are growing up, of course, right, like every other kid, they're playing video games, they're doing this and going around. Well, my wife and I decided, it's like, you know what, we're actually going to show them what a firearm can do. So we took them into calibers. And it was just a 9mm, and we had them fire it. And they found out, because we educated them, that guess what, when they pull that trigger, that bullet's not coming back. You can't hit a reset button.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I mean, it's just, their friends would come to our house and our kids would be like, we don't play with guns and we don't show them here. Because they knew exactly what was happening. And that goes along with education that you're talking about. If we went through that, they would probably know what a firearm could do.
There's a few of us in this room, I think, that are old enough to remember when you went to school. I know I had a gun rack on my pickup truck, and I had guns in my gun rack at high school, and nobody said anything. Nobody took the gun. Nobody broke into the truck. No crimes were being committed. So, and there was actually it was a media personality or somebody I heard say it. It had brought that up, the very thing that I was talking about. What's changed since then?
Family units broken down completely.
Yeah. Exactly. The gun hasn't changed, and there was no violence being committed using those at schools or anything else. What's changed? The people have changed. The family unit has changed. That's what's going on. But it's.
And the government repetitious lies have changed.
Right.
Well, you got
AR, assault rifle.
No,
exactly.
If I hear that one more time,
explain
right.
it, please.
it's just.
Okay, AR. It is not. It does not stand for automatic rifle, and it does not stand for assault rifle. It stands for armor light rifle. And you will see every manufacturer will have their own little twist on it. Anderson is an AM, Spike's Tactical is an ST, Aero Precision is an X15, or an M, or depending on the one.
6-hour XD, whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they all have their own. It's a modern sporting rifle. That's what it is. It is the most commonly used or owned gun in the country.
And the 15 is the version that came out, the last version of 15.
Right.
You know what we hear too, and I'm sure you guys hear this also. It's like, well, why do you need an AR? Why do you need something like that? So I actually told the lady, it's like, why are you driving a Tesla when Nissan has a Volt or Nissan has a Leaf, electric Leaf?
Right.
Well, because I like it and I can, and that's what I want to drive. It's like, well, then that's why we have consumers come in here, because they like it and they like the way it shoots. It's like they're not going out just to buy an AR,
Right,
but they like it, and and guess what? We get thousands of people in our ranges shooting their ARs because they like shooting them. They're scoping them in, or else they're going out and
The other
And if you
How about
took
minor calibers, by the way?
and if you took the bullets and put them out for people to see, which we invited every Democrat up there. We said we'd even take guns up there. Of course, they lost their minds. But we've invited them to the store. We said, we'll lay everything out. We'll show you everything. But you lay out the bullets, and you look at a .223 or 5.56 bullet, it, in comparison to a .308 or a 30-06 or 7mm or
50 caliber?
a 300. I mean, it's like...
if you don't know how to look at the jacket, you're like, oh.
Right. I mean, it's like there are a lot more powerful bullets out there than an AR-15. Right. A lot. And they don't understand,
Well, the other thing is, too, the misconception about the AR is derived from the M16. No, it's not.
No.
The M16 came out almost 10 years later than the AR-15, which was designed originally as a civilian firearm. It was designed to teach younger people how to shoot accurately for sport shooting, hunting, small game, as well as getting them ready for a type of military service, if need be. But it was all around learning and shooting and getting out there, but still maintaining a lightweight rifle.
Right.
And then Colt got their hands on it and got the contract. And then it became the M16. And now the M4 and all the other variants that it has now. But it goes back to it being a civilian firearm.
Right.
And some of these people go, well, millions of people have died to that firearm, blah, all this. I'm like,
Well, that's got to go back to the
millions of
statistics,
people
because-
died to a Car 98 and a Mosin Nagant as well. Do you want to ban those?
or an M1 Garand. I actually saw a politician holding up an M1 Garand. Now, these rifles are okay. These ones are evil, not knowing that according to Nimitz, I believe it was, said the M1 Garand is what won the war.
Won the war. Right.
And call it the greatest battlefield implement ever.
Right. So actually speaking, the M1 Garand killed a whole lot more people than the M16 ever did. But again, there's no comprehension. It's unfortunate that they
weigh as much as 10 moving boxes.
and then the one guy who got PTSD from shooting at some reporter or something shot it.
Yeah, it bruised my shoulder.
And he got PTSD, and I'm like, wow, I see 8-year-old girls shooting AR-15s. And
Well, as
they're
soon
quite
as he
accurate
said
with
that
them.
and showed that, all of a sudden it shows this little girl. Her name is Autumn. And it shows her running a 3-gun course. She's 10, and she is shredding that course with
Right.
that AR. And just
AR, shotgun, yeah, everything, handgun.
AR, shotgun, handgun, and she's
Yep.
it's like, and they're like, how bad's the recoil in the AR? It's nothing. It's much less than my pistol.
Right.
When I was in the Friends of NRA banquet situation there, we were making grants on the money that we raised, mostly to 4-H and some to women's shooting sports. And I thought, why aren't we doing this? Because the ROTC units are eligible also. So we got in touch with, he actually made the contact, got in touch with the NJROTC outfit and Santa Fe High School. And we began giving them a series of grants, a few $1,000s a year, on what they wanted to build their program. They had old stuff, broken stuff,
Barrels
and
like that.
yeah, it was really bad. And we we were able to equip them with good enough equipment that eventually they won the NJROTC National Championship. Then they went on and won the All Services National Championship. Santa Fe High School.
And
Now the reason that I was interested in this, I'll tell you quite frankly, it was in the middle of the wars, and most of those kids that were in those units, they were going to be facing real bullets within a couple years. They were going to a war zone. Most of them were going to. And I thought, well, this gives them a little fun. It keeps them off the video games. And it will also give them a little bit of advanced training that might help keep them alive eventually. And it was real successful. After they won the All Services National Championship, the school board found out about it. Called a special meeting to deny the NRA funding.
the NRA blood money fund.
Yeah, blood money funding, they called it. And so we went to that meeting. Now, fortunately, the grant that had already been given after the last banquet, it was already spent. They'd already received the items and everything else. But they said, we're gonna direct that the money be turned back to the NRA, and we're not gonna allow that, and we will find the money elsewhere to fund the ROTC program as it should be. They never did, by the way.
It hasn't been funded.
Hasn't been. I don't think it's been funded since then.
No.
But that was kind of the attitude on that school board, and that was it disturbed me in my soul. I guess you could say.
The superintendent of the school board straight up pointed at all of you guys that are members of NRA and friends of NRA that are here tonight. You need to find an organization that better aligns with your beliefs, because right now you're just a cold-blooded murderer whether you've committed anything or not.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is money raised by locals.
Yeah.
For
they thought it was money coming from elsewhere.
Yeah.
It was local money by local people who were coming up with this money for this purpose, knowing that it was going to be local grants that
And
were
supporting their children.
and supporting their children.
Yeah, we had the
And-
same issue here in Albuquerque. The school board had the same vote here, and we came as an organization, the New Mexico Shooting Sports, came out in mass, and we were able to communicate to them, and it was voted down. But we had the same issue. They were going to try to pass
See,
the
they
same
got a
thing.
bunch of kids up there that had a lot of those kids almost had scripts that were handed to them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Some
Same
of them
exact
were
thing here.
CNN, some of them were MSNBC, some of them were Moms Demand Action, the Bloomberg, and all those other ones, all those other organizations, and you could see it courtesy of all these, and it was like, okay,
Yeah.
these kids
So
are
it
getting
was
paid to go
obvious
up
that
there
it was
and
pure
lie.
indoctrination.
Get the
Before
young
he
people.
has to roll out, Louis, if you want to give some final closing statements, since you're not going to be able to do the individual campaigns.
You know, I think that there was a lot of great statements at this table today. A lot of the fact that, you know, we are, as New Mexican citizens, are just being ran over and our rights are being just trampled right now. And the fact that we need to be vocal, and just not us, and just not gun owners, because just remember, this is just one cog that they're trying to take out, and it's just going to keep going down the line. You know, the fact of the matter is, as I said, we've had millions of Americans who have died for our Constitution and our right to bear arms.
Yep.
And it is not just to go hunt. Owning a firearm is just not to go hunting. It's for self-protection, and it's as I said 1,000 times, it is because it is written in the Constitution by our founding fathers, and that's what we have to remember. And, you know, and unless we want to become a confiscation state, which we are getting really close to right now, we all need to be vocal and we all need to stand up. And as gentlemen like this at the table, and Ben, and thank you for doing this, I appreciate it. But I do have to do a family and God thing because I got to go to church now, gentlemen.
All right. Appreciate you.
See you, Louis.
It's out of country.
Gentlemen.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
To follow on with what Louis said, you know, I mean, when you're talking about taking away and confiscating. Well, that's really, in my opinion, once they get that done and we have guns, then they could do whatever they want. There's nothing to stop them.
I see it. I mean, I got 2 homes in Mexico. And I go down there, and there have been times that things have been very difficult, and I've dealt with the cartels. You know, going down there in almost 20 years, and the things that I've seen. I mean, people don't understand. They've never seen bodies hanging off of bridges. You know, they've never seen gangs firing at each other. I was in downtown Chihuahua going to dinner, and 2 rival gangs started shooting each other at a park right across the street from one of the main thoroughfares down there. They killed 14 people that day. And the only thing I could do is hide behind a car. First of all, make sure that I wasn't seen, because I don't like to leave witnesses. And the other one is worry if my car was going to get shot at. It's scary, some of the things that I've seen down there. They can't defend themselves. People down in Mexico are scared to death sometimes because of stuff going on.
Well, so like Marxism and communism, and we're seeing parallels of that, like very, very relevant today.
Yes.
But one of their tactics is to overwhelm on multiple fronts. And socialism disarms the citizens, but shortly after that, that's when bodies start to appear. And I've studied the parallels, and it's so frightening how many tactics they are following. You could almost predict what they're going to do because of what they've done.
Well, they've advertised it. They've said this is what we're going to do. This is nothing new. This has been going on since, probably since our country was founded, easily late 1800s, early 1900s. And they said, this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And we're going to be going into the schools, and we're going to be indoctrinating the children, and we're going to be doing this, and then we're going to be breaking up the family units, and then we're going to be dividing one race against the other, and it's exactly what they said they were going to do.
They've done it. Yeah.
And so, I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise. They said they were going to do it, and this is what they're doing. Just like the Islamists said when they said, we are at war with the United States, and this is what we're going to do. And they play the long game. It's not like this. And they plan for stuff over decades. And they did exactly what they said they were going to do. The Marxists is doing the same thing in our country right now. And they're doing exactly what they said they were going to do. People need to not say you're a conspiracy. Don't think of people that tell you this as being a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
It's happening before your eyes. It is what it is.
And they've only gotten smarter about it too, right? Instead of having these massive revolutions and slaughters of hundreds of thousands and millions of people like they've done in the past, in order to get the people in power, they do it slowly by infiltration and by getting the people that they want in there to start doing the education, to start doing the policies, and then they get those people involved in politics, and
we're seeing that.
Who would have ever thought, since Israel was attacked by Hamas, that all of these kids from the universities would come out as pro-Palestinian?
It's like activated. It was.
I mean, boom. I mean, almost before it happened.
A lot of those kids are actually, and they're finding a lot of them are Palestinian transfer students.
Right. But I mean, when you look at tens of thousands of them in the streets, but this is what they're being taught.
They're hunting a cause.
Well, they're hunting a cause, yes.
In college are hunting a cause.
And where are they learning this from? They're learning it from their professors.
Their professors. And their professors are the ones who did the riots in the 60s and everything else.
Exactly.
And they couldn't get a job. This is my personal belief. I'll tell you my personal belief here. They couldn't get a job, so they stayed in school and became professors. The rest of us went out and got jobs. We went to work. We, got drafted, got sent to the war, got whatever we had to do to fit into society and stuff. They stayed right there in the ivory towers, and now they're poisoning the new pool.
Yeah, and I hate to bring memes into it, but I remember seeing this a while back, and you don't see conservatives out there, marching in the streets and doing all this kind of stuff. Why? Because we're at work.
Yeah.
You know, and we can't do that. Yeah. So, but yeah, we do need to do something about our schools, and we've got to get tough. We can't be spineless in this fight. It's a fight for our country.
Yes.
It's a fight for preserving our country. Married to, so we're working on her immigration now, but she's new to this country. She came from a former communist country, and in spite of everything that's going on, she still came here because people still want to come to the United States. Yep. It's still the greatest country in the world. Freedom is never free. You got to fight to keep it. You know, was it Reagan who said we're only one generation away from
Anarchy.
Yeah, from losing it. And we could easily be in that generation right now. So we've got to fight back if we want to keep it. We do have the greatest country in the world. In spite of what anybody says, there's nothing wrong with being the greatest country in the world.
I want to turn something back on New Mexico's gun rights also. It specifies there, I like this better than even the Second Amendment in the Constitution, because it specifies that we have the right to guns for self-protection, for hunting, and for recreation. So, plinking at calibers or out in the desert against a clay bank, that's protected in our Constitution.
Right.
And a lot of times, we're missing the width of that freedom that we have within the New Mexico Constitution. And I think that's one thing that I like to remind people that we have the right to do, and that we need to protect. I mean, that's where our national self-defense comes from.
Exactly.
Is out there shooting that tin cans on the clay bank. Now, I hope we're picking up the tin cans. But maybe not always, but at any rate, that's where it begins.
Right.
Is right there. That's where the ability to defend it happens.
Kind of piggybacking off of some of that is it starts off at a young age too. It feels weird, and I love working alongside these guys and knowing all the people I know, but it's getting harder and harder to find people of my age that are still interested as much as, say, I am, or as much as Anthony is, as much as you are, in our Second Amendment. And so it starts off young, and you don't see the mass shooters coming out of a background of 4-H.
No.
You don't see them coming out of a background of ROTC.
No.
You don't see them coming out of a background in FFA or involved in Olympic shooting or something like that. You don't see that. And a lot of people don't realize, this is to kind of piggyback on all that, is with all the sports out there, the safest sport in the nation since the 1980s, since they've been documenting it, is shooting sports. More kids die per year on the football field due to heat stroke and head injuries and whatever else kind of injuries. More kids are injured in that than have been injured since 1980.
In shooting sports.
Shooting sports.
Well, to piggyback on that, the other one is the states that have constitutional carry laws.
Yeah.
Where you don't have to have a license to carry a concealed handgun. The statistics are going down as far as the shooting and the crime because you don't know who's carrying a gun.
Exactly.
Polite society is an armed society.
Exactly. And I wished I could remember.
I can't remember.
Get it. Yeah, I don't remember. I've heard it, but yeah, I was. That was a good one. I remember reading, and I wish I could remember where I read it. But the Second Amendment, if you will, is nothing new. And I think it goes back to France around the 1600s or 1700s, where you were actually mandated to have a spear and a shield, or there was something. Once you reached a certain age, you were actually mandated to have that in order to defend yourself, to defend your country. And if you didn't have that, you were fined, you were jailed, or whatever. So, I mean, this was the concept of a Second Amendment is absolutely nothing new, and it's gone through many societies in Europe over the last 300-400 years. It's not a new concept, and it's not weird. But look at the countries that have disarmed their societies, and look at the violence, and look at what's happened to those countries.
Well, I had always thought that everybody in Israel was armed until this happened, and then we find out that they're handing out rifles.
Israel was one of the had some of the worst gun control laws.
Yeah, a lot of
Switzerland, everybody has a firearm.
Yeah, but you're also mandated to go through military service.
Well, so does Israel.
And
So
when
does
they got
Israel.
out, when they got out of their military service, they took their weapon in Switzerland. That used to be. They had to maintain that weapon.
There is one country still does that, and that's, I believe, is Sweden. It still mandates that you have to have a firearm, so.
I can remember a story about, I can't remember who it was or whatever, but I can remember this in a historical context about a conquering regime that came in and outlawed swords because a sword was a weapon of war. And so they seized swords to disarm the public. And so the implement is, once again, not the criminal, not the problem.
Right.
The implement has always been something, whether it's a spear, a sword, a bow and arrow, a number of things that that can cause personal harm to somebody, one way or another. And so this is a very ancient tactic to disarm people, and to also make us complacent. And to change us from a we the people to we the sheeple.
Right.
I really believe that that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to pacify our entire society.
Well, I mean, the most recent thing probably most recent history is Hitler.
Yes.
That people don't. Oh, you're just that's not. There's no comparison.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually what he did. He disarmed the people so he could take control of them.
And took their kids.
No.
Took their
No.
kids.
Yeah.
Remember that? He took their kids too.
Che Guevara,
Yep.
the one that some of these
Wearing the
college
shirts,
students
socialists.
love to wear shirts
Yep,
of,
exactly,
and they're just
yep.
like, we support him.
You really don't know who these people are.
And it's like, but you're one of the one of the alphabet soup crowd. You're wealthy. You're this. You'd have been killed in an instant by that guy you have on your shirt.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen Phil Robertson's from Duck Dynasty, his video, where he's talking about all the registered deer hunters alone, and then he names 4 states, and just with 4 states within the United States, that would be the largest standing army in the world. And so he pretty much makes the case, and the guy who sent him the information makes the case that that is national security.
Absolutely.
And we're seeing it with Israel right now, with only 1,000 that cross that border, a few thousand. But now we have within America millions unaccounted for, and that's what a lot of people right now are actually bracing for. We're bracing for something to happen.
It's going to have, it's going to have to come from within. Admiral Yamamoto in World War II said that the reason that the Japan did not invade our mainland, his phrase was, I think this is pretty much it, because behind every blade of grass will be an American with a gun. So this is, we are a force, as you say. We are a force. And, there was a huge force in Japan, that did attack us in Hawaii, but they weren't going to attack the mainland because they knew.
Yeah, they got as far as the Aleutians, and they realized those woodsmen up in the Aleutians alone were just causing so much mayhem.
Right.
They couldn't imagine what kind of mayhem would have been caused on the mainland.
Right.
On the American mainland.
Well, one of the issues with the whole idea that we have in the United States is a militia.
Right.
And people talk about, well, the militia is the National Guard.
No.
It's not. The militia that stood at Lexington was a civilian militia. And that's where the famous shot that was heard around the world happened. What happened on Bunker Hill, actually Breed's Hill, a lot of that was militiamen defending their rights and willing to fight and die for that right. And that's a place where we are today with some of the people in our country, and the other people want to remove that ability from us. And I just find it just incredible that people can't understand that a militia is not necessarily an organized reserve. You know, your reserve is a militia in the original terms of what they were talking about. Your state forces,
Your National Guard.
National Guard, and then you had your private militias and stuff. And I know that those have had a bad name in certain places and things in our country here, but still, the armed citizenry is a militia that has a place in this country. And we have got to protect that right. That's all there is to it.
And those sheeple will be coming to us asking for protection
Yes.
when something bad happens.
Yeah.
Well, I go to the base quite a bit, and I've had to deal with some of the people at the Air Force Base here, and
Me too.
I tell you what, this woke stuff that's going on, you know, I had an airman disrespect me, and I've been around the military for a long time, and I've never been disrespected by an airman the way this guy did. And it's like, I told him, I said, do you realize who you're talking to? I said, I have over 50-some years of military service, including my retirement. And you're trying to tell me what I need to do? And that's the thing, it's this new military, I'm worried about it.
I'm glad I just retired from the military this year, and in a position of senior leadership, and it was my time because of all of the stuff that's being, and it comes from the executive branch on down. Yep. If it wasn't being allowed to happen, but yeah, I'm seeing a lot of. I was seeing a lot of stuff that's just not conducive to having a good fighting force. You know, it's become a social experiment. I even spoke to that about in my retirement ceremony. I probably ticked off a few people, but that's okay. It was my retirement ceremony.
There you go.
But we're not a social experiment. We're a fighting force, and it has nothing to do with being transphobic or anything else. If you want to do that, you do you, but don't come in the military, and then the government is paying. The taxpayers are paying for your transition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You're probably not going to be military ready for 4 or 5 years, so you are a useless body in the military because you're not able to fight. That's what we are. That's what you're there for. Yeah. You do that somewhere else if that's what you want to do, but the military is not a place for that. A military needs to be ready to fight and ready to train.
They're so desperate for all the people that they kicked out over the whole vaccine mandate. They're sending out letters, and all these guys are like, I don't know if I want to come back anymore.
But yeah, I mean, it was
not under the commanders you've got.
But it was tough. It was tough being in that position, and I'm proud to have served as many years as I did, and you were talking about fighting for our country and fighting for our rights and to protect the rights that we've had. But I see just so much stuff going on. Air Force. I have a son in the Air Force.
Air Force.
Pardon me?
I have a good friend in the Air Force.
And just some of the stuff that's being pushed down and pronouns and this and that and everything else, that doesn't belong in the military.
Well, my niece is a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force, and she was offered full bird, and she said, no, I've had enough. Mm-hmm. So she's out this month, she'll be back in Albuquerque because she couldn't take it anymore.
Right.
My good friend, he's staying in for I don't know how much longer, but you know, he's one of the top fighter pilot trainers that the military has at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't afford to let him go
Right.
because of how good of a quality of a training pilot he is.
Right.
Of a fighter pilot. And so one of the things that has come up is we're so short on some pilots at the moment that our air superiority numbers are the lowest they've been in about 40 years.
Our material readiness is horrible right now.
Yes.
And we
Yeah,
lack
I don't-
pilots. We lack.
You know, the fuel reserves,
Yeah.
all of it counts into all of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
There, you've got to have a fuel reserve. That's one of the things. But getting back to the issue of just private ownership of guns, that is the basic and the bedrock of the security of our freedom
Absolutely.
in our country. That is the base level. You start and build from there. That protects everything else that we've got.
And that's before the Constitution, before the Declaration. It's the laws of nature, nature's God that really gives us that right, and that's our inalienable right that we're born with that. We're born with that right to defend ourselves, our property, our families, our businesses, and
Our founders,
you can't
Yeah.
give that away.
They were
can't
very-
even give that away.
Our founding fathers were brilliant men.
yeah, and they recognized that there were God-given rights.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they didn't attribute them to men-given rights or anything else. They attributed them to God.
You got the right to
And
survive.
that would be whatever, yeah, that would be whatever. I believe in God a certain way, and some people believe in God another way. That would be whatever you believe in that. There's a certain inalienable right that's there. That's the basis and the foundation of everything. And then from there, our founding fathers enumerated the rights that we gave the government.
Exactly.
Right.
What they're allowed to do.
And they're flipping it.
Exactly.
And our governor is one of the worst about that. Want the governor from the top down.
What
And the president.
the 9 words? The 9 words that you should fear the most.
Yes.
Ronald Reagan. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help.
What does Kamala scream and say? We're from the government. We're here to help.
She literally says it
And
word
she
for word.
literally said it
Was
word
there somebody quoted that the other day
Yeah, Becerra or somebody that
Yeah.
thought it.
and took it out of context,
Mm-hmm.
where he was warning that the worst thing that you could have was somebody saying, I'm from the government and here to protect. He said, well, I believe in Ronald Reagan's words. We're from the government and
We're here to help. Yep.
Some of the getting back to militia, firearms ownership, and everything else. Our founding fathers wouldn't have been able to have done what they were able to do.
Right.
If it hadn't been for the private funding of not just small arms, but also of cannons
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
and warships.
Mm-hmm.
And
Where'd they
when
get
you
those from? They
And
got
when
it.
you consider the artillery and everything else that was
And
involved.
what a lot of people don't realize, a lot of those were privately owned.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, the
and
cannons were.
you hear people, Biden and Grisham and even the Bernalillo County AG who was at a meeting at our store, and I called out on some things. Well, you don't have the right to own a bazooka, or you don't have the right to do this, or blah blah blah. You just can't go out and buy one. Well, no, you can't go out and buy one, but if I was able to, I should be able to. I mean, well, our founding fathers, well, actually,
Yep.
they did.
Yep.
They owned warships, and they owned cannons, and they
I
owned.
want to buy a retired battleship. Let me buy it if I
Exactly.
have the funds.
If I want to buy a tank, I should be able to buy a tank.
And
You know,
have to
There
deal
are
with it.
people who own tanks, by
There
the
are.
way.
There are.
I just want an F-16. But
Yeah, there you go.
That's funny.
no, but one thing that I am doing is every week or every other week I go in and I buy more ammunition. Because
Yeah.
with the people that are coming, like you said, from down across the border, we don't know who's going to be here.
Mhm.
And,
That's right.
And they know it, like the FBI director said.
All of a sudden.
Something's going to happen.
Mhm.
It's a matter
That's
of time.
that's another thing I think the governor's possibly going to go after is ID checks to buy ammo. I've heard this.
Like California?
Has anybody else heard that?
I haven't heard it yet, but nothing surprises me.
She's gonna follow California as
Yeah.
much as she can
To the T,
because she's
almost.
the Pelosi puppet. It's,
Right. How far left can I go?
Yeah.
Mhm. How much can I get away with? And there are so many. Well, most of the U.S. right now is looking at New Mexico and our governor to see
What she gets away with?
what she gets away with and what she doesn't. And it's on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It is both sides of the aisle. When she did her little health order, she said the quiet part out loud.
And she just extended it, by the way, through
She
the
did,
end of
yep.
December.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the 14 days to slow the spread was
Right.
the dress rehearsal
Yeah.
for what we're going through right now.
But the other thing, the one, if she gets a 14-day waiting period passed, what's that gonna do to gun stores? And the other one's about taking, the revenue or whatever too, so.
Sure. I mean, that's, we're trying to, we're still a fledgling organization. You put your plug in, I'll put my plug in. The New Mexico Firearms Industry Association, and we're trying to get everybody on board. Anybody in the industry, the manufacturers. We have some big manufacturers here in New Mexico now, and all the mom and pop stores, all the brick and mortars, and I don't know if it's the New Mexico thing that's never going to happen, but we need to. We were able to effectively stop a lot of the anti-gun legislation this year, and it was only a handful of us that were up there from the Albuquerque, Santa Fe area, and then we had one from Grants that was coming in as well pretty regularly. And
I literally had people tell me on my campaign that it'll never happen here. Not in New Mexico. It'll never happen.
right, and we need to get all of these other stores throughout New Mexico on board with us. Because there's strength in numbers. And when we were talking to, and I don't remember who told me this, but they said, go down and talk to this person because it's going to, I think it was actually Hockman Vigil, who's a Democrat. And she was on the Senate Bill 428 that Louis brought up. And she's like, I'm absolutely against this bill. It's horrible for New Mexico, horrible for New Mexico businesses, the unfair trade practice. And that was from Senator Cervantes.
Cervantes.
And he's the
dangerous person.
He's the same one that got the malpractice bill through.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't have good doctors in New Mexico.
That's right.
They're all leaving because they can't afford to stay.
Yep.
So he's trying to do this with Senate Bill 428. The marijuana industry is exempt from it. Every business will be subject to it. We already have this law in effect here, and it's like a $300 or $500 fine. And it's a very, the bill is actually very nebulous as to what charge could be brought against you, or what constitutes an unfair trade practice. And you don't even have to be harmed by it. You could be aware of it.
And be scared.
And be scared or whatever, and also file a claim against this store or individual or whatever. Even if it's frivolous, you win, you still have to pay your own legal fees. If you lose, you got to pay your legal fees and their legal fees. But it's going to be a $10,000 fine for every business and a $250,000 fine for any gun-related business.
Yeah.
So this is bad for New Mexico, but I went off on a tangent. What I meant to say, I think she's the one that told me that you go down and you go talk to, she says, do whatever you can to stop this bill. Thank you for your help and your support. And I think it was her that told me to go down and make sure that we talk to the speaker in person, and because it meant more that a New Mexican was down there saying, look, we can't do this. Just not that bill, but many other bills. Then a lot of the, NSSF, NRA, a lot of other organizations where they're helping us, which was great. And they did a lot of amazing stuff. I was really, really pleased with that.
was awesome.
Yes. But it meant more to hear it from a New Mexican than it did from somebody from the outside the state. And so, if there's 10 of us or 15 of us from the Albuquerque area going up there, Okay, that's good. It's a huge load on everybody. But if we've got the whole state with all of these constituents that own gun stores and own businesses that are reaching out to their customers who are constituents, because that's all a politician cares about, is getting elected the next time around.
Yeah.
And if you mess with that, they're gonna listen. We put out I think there was 2 stores, we put out massive text and email blasts. We shut down the internet up in Santa Fe. And because of everybody calling and everybody sending emails saying, we don't want this. And, but we need more. And we need all the people in the industry to be joining up with us, because then that just makes us an even bigger voice.
Yes.
And because that, it's that whole exponential growth. One person tells 10 people, that person tells 10 people. And if you have all of this information that's being put out from the locals and the small communities, and then going out to their constituents, and then they're calling up their legislators and saying, no, I don't want this, that's what's going to make a difference.
It is, and you got some very manipulative, coercive people up there. I know you were there. I was there when Joseph Cervantes was testifying for his bill for 428, and I never heard such stuff. This was Hugo Chavez reborn.
Right, and it almost slid through without anybody knowing about it.
Yeah, it did. It was. I just couldn't believe the things that he was saying and implying were the necessity of this to protect the citizens or some sort of garbage. You heard the whole thing too. But that was crazy. I couldn't believe that there was a legislator in our state that was actually saying this on the floor of our legislature. It just blew me away.
Follow the money.
Yeah.
He just bought a $5 million mansion in Santa Fe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And he's a trial attorney. He makes a lot of money off those cases and the malpractice stuff.
I think he wants to be governor one of these days.
Right, but he's going to make money off all this arbitration.
Yeah.
One way or another.
Follow the money.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's why
what
Andrea
it
did what
is.
she did. She can't get any. She can't find a job at a law office. So
Well,
she
she couldn't pass the bar from
She
what I.
hasn't been able to pass a bar, yeah. I think that's what
Yeah.
it is. Well, another dangerous attorney that's out there we have to watch out for. I'll raise a red flag on. That's Cedillo Lopez.
Sam Bregman too.
Yeah.
Oh, I just heard when he was speaking to a women's group. He is, despite of what he's saying is, oh, I'm pro Second Amendment and this and that. The guy knows absolutely nothing about guns.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And he blatantly denied when I was sitting, myself and Tom were sitting right next to him when he said it, because we looked at each other. And he was saying the assault weapons ban saved lives, magazine ban capacity saved lives, and he said that having the 9-round capacity magazines would save lives, max 9 rounds. And I brought that up at the meeting, and I never said that.
Yeah.
I was sitting right next to you when you said that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're going to have to be careful as we move forward, and in really, I think we're going to have to target some of our opposition. We're going to have to reveal some facts about some legislators.
Again,
And,
time to take off the kid gloves.
That's right.
We got the media to do it, so
Yes.
let me know. So before we bring this to a close, because we still have to do the individual campaign videos, like for your organization if you want to use it, and same with you guys, you could do individual ones as well. Any final remarks you want to kind of say to New Mexico? And you'll probably say it again, but
Right. There are no such thing as conspiracy theories. What's going on in New Mexico and in the country is really happening. Wake up, take action. We could easily lose this country that we love so much. We could easily lose this state that we love so much. Don't let it happen. Be a part of the solution. Don't be part of the problem. You gotta fight. You gotta fight if we want to keep what we have. If you want to keep what you enjoy, and do it without government intervention. That's not going to happen by being complacent and sitting back and letting others do it. You've got to fight for it. We still live in the greatest country in the world, and we've got people that are still wanting to come here. If it was so bad, why do we have everybody crossing our borders illegally? We have everybody coming here because they know how great our country is, but we got to fight to keep it. Freedom is never free.
The only thing I have to say is that as long as the New Mexico Shooting Sports Association exists, and we've been around since 1935, so we're not one of these fly-by-night organizations that are asking for your money. We've been around fighting for gun rights, again, since 1935. We're going to continue doing it. And we need the membership, we need the money. So if you can support us, our website is nmssa.org. Join, it's not expensive, and that helps everybody because we've got to continue to preserve our gun rights.
Piggybacking off of Anthony for that is when you join, also see what you can do within the organization, right? Get out there, bring in more people, tell your friends, get them involved. If you have a business, join through the business, through corporate sponsor member or corporate membership. That's one way that we can also better help others too. Not just gun stores. We've got some that are, mechanic shops that are Pro 2A. We are there. We are here to help fight for the citizens of New Mexico. The more members we have in more areas, the better we are to better represent you.
I'm an endowment member of NRA and a member of NMSSA, and proudly support those organizations and their efforts that are in here. But my appeal to the people of New Mexico is to reconsider what liberty really means. What this whole country is founded on is liberty. We've got to reawaken people to stand for liberty above all else.